Welcome on in. Plarium has buffed 2 new champions, and we're going to talk about it. My name is PJ. This is a Raid Shadow Legends video, and we're going to talk about if they're good buffs or not good buffs, and if they're going to help the player base or if they're going to help Plarium more. Because it seems like some of these recent champion buffs have been maybe helping Plarium a little bit more than the player base. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But first, we're going to talk about the first. It's Diamant and Androc are the 2 champions that are getting buffed. We'll talk about Androc second. Hold up, guys. Now is the perfect time to click on my link in the description and get a free Karato as well as 4 more insane free epics as you level up. Here's how to do it. Step 1, log out of Plarium Play on PC and uninstall. Step 2, click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Step 3, launch raid and complete the tutorial. Step 4, go to the inbox and claim your first champion. Don't miss out on your chance to get a free Karato after signing up, as well as Uugo, Rector Drath, Tagoar, and Mausoleum Mage as you progress through the game. So click on my link right now and let's crush this together. We'll talk about this dude first. Sorry, the text is a little blurry, but you should be able to get an idea of what it's saying. I'll read it as well. So, Diamant, he's a Void Legendary Ogren. So, his A2 is getting changed. So, this is what it was before. Attacks all enemies, increases the duration of all ally buffs for 1 turn. Fills this champion's turn meter by 10%. Fills their turn meter by an additional 5% for each buff they had. Excuse me, its duration increased by the skill. And it's changing to attacks all enemies, increases the duration of all ally buffs by 1 turn. Fills the turn meter by all allies by 20%. So it's just going to be a more consistent turn meter boost. This technically you could have it give you more than 20% turn meter, but if you're going to use it, if you're using him as a turn meter booster, he's probably going to be going first or second, and probably not going to be that many buffs up depending on the team. So way more conditional. I think the flat 20% turn meter boost is going to be a lot better. So looks good. And then they changed the passive. So his first passive, or his initial passive right now, is a 50% chance to convert any debuff into buff before it's placed on this champion. And then so it decrease attack into increase attack, decrease defense to increase defense, decrease speed to increase speed, decrease crit rate, decrease crit damage into the increase crit damage. And what it's getting changed to is pretty much the same thing. Has a 50% chance to convert all debuffs into buffs before it's placed on an ally. So not just this champion, on anybody. I'm not sure if this has a cooldown or not, but definitely better than it was before. Still, he doesn't really feel like a Void Legendary to me. It seems like it's very conditional still for limited content like Faction Wars, Hard, Cursed City. Not sure if he's still gonna get any much play in PvP. Like, his passive's annoying, but I'm not sure if it's enough to rely on. And then he has a turn meter fill, but I'm not sure if the rest of his kit is really worth bringing him just for the turn meter fill. He doesn't have a speed aura, so yeah, I don't know. Still not too happy with him. If I pull him or if someone pulls him, I think they're still gonna be pretty upset. He looks really cool visually, but as far as his kit, not a big fan. Outside of just like I said, limited content, Hard Faction Wars, he'd probably help you. Maybe some Cursed City rooms, Doom Tower rooms, but don't think he's gonna be going into anyone's PvP. Maybe he could be useful for Siege. Ogren only Siege rooms, he could maybe be kind of nasty. I could see that being useful when it's very like specific, limited, where you can only use Ogrens. But when you have a full roster, I'm not sure how much play he's gonna be getting, which kind of stinks, because if you get a Void Legendary, you really want them to be impactful and useful, and hurts if they're not that. And I feel like this is gonna be one of those for people that pull. And it stinks because there is a 2x, or I shouldn't say stinks, but there's a 2x Voids coming up, and I'm sure there's gonna be a few people, hopefully not myself, knock on wood, none of you guys unless you want him, but some people are gonna pull him, which I guess he's getting buffed, but still don't think it's that special. So let's go on to Androc. I actually have Androc. I use him quite a bit. I use him in my Hydra team in his second form. A lot of people use him in his first form, in Hydra, Chimera as well. So we're gonna be taking a look and seeing what they're doing to him. So this is his first form. Before A1, attacks on enemy, increase defense. Same thing, he's just getting a damage multiplier increase, so he's gonna be hitting a little bit harder. A2, so the A2 is pretty good. Before it places increased res, 50% increased res, strengthen, and continuous heal on all allies for 2 turns. And then an additional 15% continuous heal if they're less than 50% HP. And the new, what he's gonna do now is same exact thing, so nothing else changes. It's gonna be the same move, but they're adding also fills the turn meter by all allies by 15%. So now he could become more of like a turn meter booster, especially with increased res. strengthened. He doesn't have increased speed, so similar-ish to Sify, but not quite as good with no increased speed. But I still think he could be a good turn meter booster if you have a high blessing. If you have a 6-star blessing for him with that extra speed from a mythical, you get like 20 speed. That's huge. So maybe it could be a turn meter booster for you, and then also bringing up the increased res, strength, and continuous heals could be pretty tanky. So I do like that. His first form was already really good. I didn't really think his first form needed a buff, so I'm happy. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm mad that they gave him a buff, but I just personally think his second form needed more work than his first form. I thought his first form was already pretty good. So anything that they did to the first form, I think is just cherry on top, icing on the cake. I think it's even better. I thought this was already pretty good first form to begin with. And then we got the passive, so increases his champion's res by 10% for each buff on each ally. And then this is like the part that people really love about him is the critical hit inflicted by allies fills the turn meter of all allies by 5%, occurs once per turn. So he really can start cycling through people's abilities with the passive, and now with having turn meter boosting on the A3, or is this, yeah, A3, this is A3. You're gonna be cycling through very, very quickly. So that's before, and then after, it's gonna increase each ally's res by 10% for each buff on all allies. So changes from increases his champion's res by 10 for each buff on each ally to increases each ally's res. So you're increasing the whole team's res now on all allies for each buff. So that's gonna stack up quite a bit. If it's reading how I think it's gonna read, each ally, if you're in Hydra, they have 5, let's say they each have 5 buffs. There's 6 people, that's 30 buffs. 30 times 100, you're getting extra 300 res just from the passive, and then you're also getting increased res on top of that. Seems very nasty. This actually might make high res teams viable again in arena, live arena, classic arena, 3v3. If this working how I'm thinking it's working, you could easily have over 1,000 res very, very easily with building res into the kit, with the increased res, with this passive. Could maybe actually change the game up a little bit. This might be meta shifting a little bit to where you could actually start building some increased res teams. It is hard with mythicals because they ignore the res, but this might be a big enough boost to where you could still resist even with mythicals having all their extra accuracy. If they have increased accuracy, then I'm not sure, but this is very, very interesting. And then he still has the other part. Critical hits inflicts all allies. A critical hit inflicted by allies fills the turn meter of all allies by 5%. So that's staying the same, but this is the big part. Increases each ally's res instead of just his res, and then for each buff on all allies. That is very interesting. We'll have to see how that actually plays out, but that seems very, very strong for high res teams, and maybe could swing the meta a little bit. We'll see, depending on how that actually works. Alright, now let's get into his second form. Now, I've been saying he needs a buff in his second form for a long time, and there was really one thing that I wanted them to do, and they didn't do it. To be fair, this is more of a personal reason and personal preference of what I want. I use him in the second form for his decreased defense and his weaken and the block buffs. He's pretty much, I have Ninja and him as the decreased defense champions, both on the A1. And the thing I have an issue with him is that it's a 1-turn decreased defense. His attack one enemies has a 50% chance of placing a decreased defense on all enemies for 1 turn. Please make it 2 turns. There's multiple champions in the game that have 2-turn decreased defense on the A1. If we look at Ray, I mean, I think I'm in the middle of a battle right now, yeah. But if you look at Ray has pretty much the same exact A1. It's a AoE 50% chance, and she places it for 2 turns. She's a legendary, he's a mythic. Also, Queen of Hearts, she's a void legendary, which is really strong. He's a mythical. Queen of Hearts has an A1 that's an AoE, 100% chance of placing decreased defense for 2 turns, and also fills turn meter by 5% for each ally, I believe. So they're legendary, void, I get it. He's a mythical. I would have loved to see a 2-turn decreased defense on the A1. That's really all I wanted them to do, and they did everything but that. But that's my little rant. Besides that, I think the buffs do look pretty good, but I really wanted them to make it a 2-turn decreased defense, and they didn't. So very sad about that, but we'll get back into the rest of his kit. So they made him hit it a little bit harder on the second form as well. That's one of the things they wanted to do, was make him a little bit more viable as a damage dealer. So left the A1 the same, but they just did damage increase, multiplier increase, so should be hitting harder there. I really wish it was a 2-turn decreased defense. We'll see what happens in the future. So the A2, so before it attacks all enemies, places decreased res, weaken, enfeeble for 2 turns. If the enemy has 50% HP or less, enfeeble cannot be removed. and they're changing that to the same exact thing, but they're also decreasing the turn meter of all enemies by 15%, and then a damage multiplier increase. Not gonna really help me in Hydra. You can't decrease the turn meter in Hydra, but the damage multiplier could be good, and will definitely be good in wave content, PvE. Could be good for PvP as well, turn meter boost. This is gonna be very scary in Faction Wars hard facing us. We'll talk about that in a little bit. When early in the video I said, is this more of a buff for Plarium or us? It's definitely a buff for us, but I think this is a little bit of buff for Plarium as well. And we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, so decreased turn meter of all enemies, pretty good. Damage multiplier increased, and then the A3. Right, so the first A3, or originally right now, what it does is removes all buffs from all enemies, deals pure damage to each enemy equal to 5% of the target's max HP. For each buff removed, this damage cannot be critical. This damage cannot be critical. Also places block buffs, debuff on all enemies without buffs for 2 turns. This move right now hits really poorly. Not much damage from what I've seen. I use it more for the strip and the block buffs because he places the block buffs. It's he's not a hit, so it won't weak hit. It also will go through the poison cloud if I get bad timing and the poison cloud goes up. I can put the block buffs on after, so there won't be any more damage and won't get any more buffs up. The poison cloud's still there, but I can limit the future damage. So I really liked that part of this move now. So what they're changing to is removes all buffs from all enemies, then attacks all enemies. If the target's a boss, the damage inflicts equal to 10% of their max HP, so becoming a little bit better of a max HP hitter. Also places block buffs on all enemies without buffs for 2 turns. Damage multiplier changed. Very interested to see how this is going to hit, how hard it's going to hit. Maybe I'll have to start building him with a little bit of damage. Right now I have him in 9-piece protection for the first form buffs, and I swap over, and then I let him do all of the debuffs in the second form. Then when the buffs fall off, I switch back. I have a couple extenders on the team. I can show the team here in a little bit actually if you want to see how he does. But very interested to see how the damage is. 10% should be hitting a little bit harder. Could now be viable for maybe some Hydra damage versus just purely there for the debuffs and buffs and the turn meter boosting. So I have to keep an eye out on that. Like I said, I run him, so we'll have to test that a little bit. And then the passive changed a little bit. Increases champion's accuracy by 10 for each buff on each enemy. Each critical hit inflicted by allies decreases turn meter of all allies by 5%. So it's changing to increases each ally's accuracy by 10 for each buff on all enemies. Each critical hit inflicted by all allies decreases turn meter of enemies. If there are multiple champions of this team, this skill only activates once. Okay. So personally, this passive doesn't really make sense to me for this part. So the whole point of his kit is to have them not have buffs. You're going to be removing the buffs with the A3. You're putting up block buffs. Increases each ally's accuracy for 10 for each buff. You don't want them to have buffs. Like, this seems so stupid. It should be, if you have buffs, if your team has buffs, increase your ally's accuracy or something like that. But his whole kit is to pretty much get them to not have buffs. So I feel like this is super pointless. They should change this again. Plarium, come on. Read the kit. Know what they're supposed to be doing. This has no synergy at all. I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments if you think this has synergy, but in my opinion, this has zero synergy. Seems like a waste. Not really a big fan. And then his base form 6 Ascension, his speed's going from 110 to 115, so that's also going to be helping. So okay, I'm not sure if this is just, this says base form, but this is showing up in the second form. So I'm not sure if this is just the base form speed is going from 110 to 115, or if both forms are going from 110 to 115. But if it's the base form, which is this, that'd be good because he's more of a can be more of a turn meter booster now. And I think 115 might be tied for the highest base speed in the game. Not sure if there's anyone higher, but I know that's up there for one of the highest, if not the highest. So if it's on the first form, that's good. I hope it's on both forms, 115. Maybe it'll just be the first form. It says base form, 6-star Ascension. So I'm not really sure about that. I guess we'll have to see when it comes to the game if it's both forms or just the first form or just the second form, because it's showing up on the second form, but it says base form. So I'm not really sure. That's a little bit confusing. We'll see in the game when that comes out. But overall, oh yeah, so now when I make a full circle point back to the beginning of the video when I said, is this better for the players or Plarium? So I mentioned that because a lot of us are starting to do stage 18, 19, 20, 21 of Hard Faction Wars, and guess who's in one of those stages? Mr. Androc. I'm not sure if Diamant is in any of those stages. I don't think I faced him in any of the stages yet. I could be wrong, but I don't think he's in the stages. But Androc is definitely in the stages, and he's going to be even more of a pain in the ass to deal with after this, facing him. He obviously is a good buff for the player base, but I feel like recently they've been buffing a lot of champions that end up to be in a lot of these waves wave content that I've been putting out recently, and we're catching on, Plarium. You're not sneaky. The player base knows what you're doing, and we're catching on. We're calling you out. Jing Wong is another one. They buffed Jing Wong a little bit ago, and now he's everywhere in Faction Wars Hard, all over, and he's really annoying to deal with. He wasn't that good to begin with. They buffed him. He's decent, but when they're level 300 versus our level 60, that's a big difference for the amount of stats they're gaining versus ours. Huge difference. So him at 300 is nasty, and there's some other champions as well that they've buffed recently. Mountain King's another one. Mountain King they buffed I think last month. Guess who shows up in some of these waves? Mountain King. You can't decrease attack him. You can't lock him out. He's getting an extra turn. He's boosting. Like, he's a menace now. He was decent before, but now he's really good in these waves that we have to face, and it's just very ironic that they're boosting all these champions that we so happen to face in these waves. And Androc's again one of them. I'm happy he's getting a buff. I wish they would have changed the A1. I think his first form was already really good, and it's even better. Second form still, I don't know, we'll have to see how much it hits. If he doesn't hit hard, then I feel like the second form is still kind of lackluster. I feel like the passive is really stupid on him in the second form. Passive in the first form is amazing. Honestly, I just wish this was the passive for both forms. Getting turn meter on all critical hits is so strong. I wish they would just give him both that passive in both forms. This passive I'm not really a big fan of, at least the way I use him. And Hydra doesn't really work out that well. Let's see if we can show you actually the Hydra team here real quick. Hopefully we're closing in. Yeah, this run's almost over. Perfect. So we can show you the Hydra run after that. But yeah, not a big fan of the second form passive. Think they still failed on it. And if he doesn't hit that hard in the second form, I don't know. The Enfeeble's good, but we'll have to see. I think his first form's really strong though, and they just made it even better, which I'm not complaining. I just use him in the second form, and I wish they would have showed him some love. So I do want to show you the Hydra key that I use him in. I already collected the rewards, so you can't see the full damage. You have to take my word for it, but it does over 1 billion damage. Almost all auto. I manual some of it. It's probably like, depending on how I'm feeling it, 80% auto, and then I'll manual the 20% just to try to save some provokes or save certain moves to get around. But this is the team I'm running him in right now. Sadly, I already collected my rewards, so you're not gonna be able to see. But this is the team. And as I said, I don't have decreased defense, like an AoE decreased defense. The only way I'm getting decreased defense out is if they hit me with Krisk's passive will put decreased defense out, but the decapitated heads can't hit you, so I'm not getting any decreased defense out on the decapitated heads. So I'm getting it is Ninja's A1 and Androc's A1 paired in with the ally attack from Akage, and then Tiox is bringing in Ninja for more ally attacks to get the decreased defense out more. But again, the 1 turn versus a 2 turn, it's really hurts me, and I'll just show you. I know I mentioned it earlier, but we were in the run. So Ray right here, really quick, attacks all enemies. It's an AoE. Androx is an AoE. 30%, books up to a 50% chance of decreased defense. 2 turns. She's a legendary. He's a mythical. Come over here to Queen of Hearts. She's a void legendary, I understand, but let's look at hers. Attacks all enemies. 100% chance of placing decreased defense. There's no percentage, so 100% chance. And fills turn meter of all allies by 5%. I know she's a void. He's a mythical. Like, come on, please help him out a little bit. All I want is a decreased defense for 2 turns. And again, that would make him even stronger facing us, but I think it'd be worth it. Let me know what you guys think. I know this was a lot. Only 2 champions, but we covered a decent amount and kind of ranted a little bit. Let me know your thoughts. Please leave a like, hit that sub button. Hope you have a good rest of your day / night, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.